welcome to today's episode of the Empower Performance Podcast. Today's guest is Tyler Peretz from Peretz Performance. He has a background in basketball, but also strength and conditioning, whether it's the college sector or the private sector. He's worked with almost every sport imaginable. Super busy guy doing lots of stuff, but no one better to tell than the man himself. If you mind introducing yourself for us.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Appreciate you having me on, dude. I know we talked about this for a little while, so really excited. Um, so obviously, like you said, my name's Tyler Peretz. I'm the owner of Peretz Performance LLC. Kind of just my background a little bit. So I'm up in southeastern Connecticut. So people do actually live in the state of Connecticut. It's a super small state. But I think really similarly to a lot of people in the industry, I obviously grew up playing sports. I will be honest, I was not given an ounce of God-given talent or athleticism. I was a little roly-poly kid. I probably could have been sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts, but they didn't give out NIL deals at that time. So thank God for puberty, kind of shot up on there. But outside of that, grew up playing baseball and basketball were my prime sports growing up. Going into high school, really shifted over to basketball a lot more. I was around the sport the most, essentially, because I also have a dad who is a college basketball coach, which that comes full circle to a lot of things. But growing up around that, it always had a special spot in my heart. I was fortunate enough to play at the collegiate level after high school. I played at the school, a small Division III school here in like New London County area. So Mitchell College, which is where I'm still currently at right now. Got the opportunity to play for my dad for 4 years, and had an okay career. Wasn't anything lustrous, but was fortunate enough to be part of a program that went to the NCAA tournament my freshman year and my senior year. Was team captain my senior year, and then after basketball was done, I was kind of like, all right, what are we gonna do with our lives? I got my undergrad in sport management, so very similar, I think, to Matt. Didn't have a degree in exercise phys or kinesiology or anything like that, but I was fascinated and really bought into the weight room during my college years, and I started lifting at probably the age of 14, but I went through the motions typically in high school for that. But I really fell in love with the weight room and kind of started just really getting into lifting and figuring out, nutrition stuff, why the body works the way it does. And, at that time before I graduated, I was offered a position to get my master's degree paid for by the school and to work as an admissions counselor. So I was like, all right, well, I'll definitely do that. I'm young and I get to travel a little bit. So ended up doing that for, actually till today. Still realized I actually still have the same job. Um, but I've been doing that since July of 2022, roughly. So it's been a few years. At the same time, I was brought on as a volunteer assistant coach with my dad. And my focus point, he knew that I love the weight room and everything. So my focus point definitely became kind of strength and conditioning for our program, which he really wanted to build up a lot more at that point. Because my senior year, when we were in the NCAA tournament, we actually played Randolph Macon out of Ashland, Virginia. They were the number one team in the country. They were studs. They were physical specimens, and they won the whole thing. Their margin of victory was like 30 points in the tournament. They lost one game all year, and he was like, "Yeah, like we need to really build this up." Yeah, and you're kind of the guy to do it. And I was like, "Okay, perfect. My sport management background will definitely help with that in the beginning." So, started getting, little certifications, basic CPT, got, certified as a strength coach through ISSA and, just being around the sport and programming and, trying to figure out everything to do. I've said to myself, this is where I want to be. This is where my passion is. And it's not just a love. I'm obsessed with it. I eat, sleep, and breathe. I think I annoy everybody because they're like, do you do anything else other than train? And I'm like, yeah, I program too. So that's the other thing I do. But since then, I started to take on a few other teams. Started up Peretz Performance back in July of this year, right after I actually got back from the Coach 'em Up conference down in Austin. Cool. So since then, really have really built up myself as a business and definitely taken on my coaching to all new levels. So currently, I obviously program for our men's basketball team, and I train with them. Our women's volleyball team at the school, men's soccer. I have a few Gen Pop clients as well that I've worked with. In the past, I've also done women's soccer, softball, men's lacrosse, and then I currently also am the strength coach for a local high school's boys and girls hockey team. So I do all that plus a 37.5 hour desk job. So it is fun. It is a fun time.
Yeah, there's like 3 things I could say based off that. One of them is, just about your start, about not being like a stud athlete, but just like loving the process so much. I feel like that's a huge strength coach kind of archetype, and that was definitely my thing. Um, I was probably 9 when I started playing soccer. I didn't play sports that much before that. Started playing travel at 13, and I was like, I'd like to play in college, just because everybody said I was like trash, and I was like, all right, well, I have to prove you guys wrong. So from like 13 to 18, I was like taking it so seriously, and I was like the worst kid. And I ended up being the only person from my high school senior year to get a soccer scholarship, or not scholarship, but to be able to go on and play college and soccer in college. So it felt nice. I was like, okay, this hard work stuff definitely makes a difference. And you were talking about your experience when you're like 14 years old getting into weightlifting. I'm sure just like me when I was around that age, like it wasn't the best training in the world, but I mean, you had the right like hard nosed mentality, and you're just gonna like work your ass off, and that can do a lot for you. It definitely helps when you learn what smart training looks like and how to do it better. And then you talked about like the basketball team, how like physicality made such a big difference your senior year. It almost sounds like Michael Jordan when he first entered the NBA. It's like, okay, this guy's got a ton of skill and all this stuff, but he's getting just manhandled. And he learned that if he just puts like the time into the weight room, it can help elevate his actual skills. He's actually able to perform his skills better on the court because he has a better foundation for all that. So I think it's cool that we have a sort of a similar backstory. And then I also wanted to commend you because, like, yeah, you can say that you played for your dad or you got like the opportunity to get your master's through your college and all that stuff, but these are all opportunities that you've earned and you're doing the work. And there's so few people that actually want to do the work these days. They want handouts and all that stuff, and you're coaching every sport I've ever heard of. I'm sure there's other things that you're doing. You're also working with Gen Pop. You started a business while having like essentially a full-time job and all that. I mean, what you're doing is outstanding and credit to you. Because there's not a lot of people that want to work like that. And I find that like my opinion is the real thing that like determines success isn't like talking about doing the thing, thinking about doing the thing, planning and doing the thing. It's like doing the actual thing. And it sounds like you're either doing the thing or you're sleeping, and I don't even know how much you're sleeping. So I just want to commend you for your work. That's great.
No, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, my parents say the same thing because nowadays I'm getting up. I'll give you an example of probably what my actual day looks like, and
Mhm.
anytime I've ever said it, people are like, "You're kidding me, right?" So
Yeah.
like nowadays, like I'll wake up like around like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
I have everything packed the night before. I just grab all my food that I need for the day and, get dressed, have all my stuff. I'm right out the door like 10 minutes after I wake up. I have my pre workout and creatine mix, go right over to the school. Thank God I'm only like a 7 minute drive. So go right over there, get my lift in. Then, basketball, we like to lift early in the morning. Like
Mhm.
those guys are a 7 a.m. group, and
Mhm.
I love it. 6:55. Anyone who shows up after 6:55 is my favorite time because I get to tell them go back to your room because you showed up late.
Sure.
Um, so do their lift with them, get myself ready, shower at the school. Then I go to the other side of campus where my office is.
Mhm.
I'm down there doing my admissions work, answering emails, talking to families, trying to recruit kids to come to the school.
Mhm.
Then I would actually use my lunch break, my lunch hour, go back to the gym, train another team on campus. So a lot of times it was like men's soccer. So train them for an hour,
Mhm.
go back to my office, eat my lunch while I'm working, all that stuff. And then around 4:30, I'd leave, drive a half hour to NFA, which is the high school I'm training boys and girls hockey. And it's myself with almost 40 international hockey players
Okay.
and just myself with all 40 of them. They're
Mhm.
all doing the same lift. And I do that from like 5:30 to like 6:30, drive a half hour home, grab like Chipotle or something if I didn't take dinner, and then just program and make sure I'm set for the next day and go to bed by like 10 o'clock. Like that's the chaos that's the chaos I live in, but honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way because
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in you're gonna grind in your 20s
Yeah.
to, and you still grind in your 30s too. It's always
Right.
just a grind. Like there's never a time that you're ever gonna settle for anything. And my friend and I were just talking about this yesterday. Like, my friend who he's in a starting rotation for the Pittsburgh Pirates and he's home and we
Yeah.
were talking about, you know, different stuff in each other's industry, like very similarly to not gonna compare to a professional athlete, but to someone who's in the strength conditioning realm or just any business, having your own business and being a professional athlete, you can never be content. Like if you find a time where you're really content with what you're doing, there's going to be somebody else who's trying to come up behind you, and you always have to always want more. So, that's something that we were actually literally just talking about yesterday.
It's interesting that you say that because we're both solo entrepreneurs, and it's a weird thing to say. The business doesn't grow unless you grow. It's a hard thing to kind of explain to people sometimes, but it's like your business growth is directly correlated to your personal development, what you're willing to learn, all that stuff. Otherwise, you have to outsource, and then that costs money. So you have to have more income and specialize and all that stuff. But I mean, it's hard sometimes wearing all these different hats. Like, I'm not very good at this tech stuff, and I'm starting the podcast because I just think it's a wonderful opportunity. But then there's also the business side, the marketing, the administrative side, the programming, the coaching, and then within coaching, there's the nutrition, the psychology, like the physical side. So like, so many different things you have to learn about, and sometimes it feels overwhelming. It's like, man, how do I learn all these things? How do I be good at all these things? But I think that's what I'm trying to say is the most important thing is to get started and you'll learn along the way and just keep working. And I actually think that experience has been the best teacher for me. Sometimes I'll do something and it's
Yeah.
not as good as I want it to be, and it might feel like failure to you. And then that's when you actually like dig really deep into whatever you don't want to run into that problem again, and that's where you grow the most. And there's not really any shortcut away like around it. There's no way around it. I find a lot of people want that, but the 20s is probably the best time to grind. And then once you start, if this is what you want, of course, but you start having a family and all that stuff, you have other commitments. It makes it a little bit more difficult to balance that out. But this is the perfect time to, like literally rise and grind. And I would say it
Yeah.
also is probably helpful that you love what you do because I mean, if this was a different job, not everybody's so fortunate to put as much effort into something they enjoy. Some people have to settle for jobs they don't like, and then they don't put that much effort in. Other people, they have to work like crazy in jobs that they absolutely hate and all that stuff. So this is, even though it can be difficult sometimes, it's still a blessing at the end of the day. I get to say I enjoy my job, and I get to feel good about it because I feel like it makes a positive difference in the lives of my clients, as opposed to being like what some people think of as like a sleazy salesman or something like that. I don't lay awake at night wondering if what I'm doing is moral or anything like that. So, I commend you for your hard work, dude.
No, yeah, I appreciate it, man. And like you even said it, like, we're, you know, obviously you're a lot further along, in being an entrepreneur and being in the industry, and we both, had the business background. That's always a great aspect to have because
Mhm.
we've studied it, we've spent money on it, so it's always good to know that part. But like essentially, and I see in both your content that you post and the stuff that like I have and the stuff that a lot of, mutual
Mhm.
colleagues that we both have, like essentially their business and our businesses are an extension of who we are, especially when you're in the private sector. That's what you're really selling. Like you're not
Mhm.
selling fitness. Like if everybody was selling fitness, which they are, like if you're in the realm of being a private sector personal trainer or being, strength and conditioning, like if you're telling people, well, what do you do? Oh, I sell fitness. Okay, well, so does the next person
Everybody
next to
else,
you. It's
yeah.
like what everybody's doing that. Like the
Mhm.
problem is, and you have to always say is, this is who I am.
Mhm.
I'm not selling you the fitness aspect of it. I'm selling you of what I can do for you.
Mhm.
I'm selling you this is what I want. This is what I'll do for you.
Mhm.
So this is what you're getting when you connect with me.
I think the beauty in that too is that I know very well that I'm not for everybody and everybody's not for me. And then the other thing too is even though it's a very saturated market, there's a lot of people like selling fitness. I still find that there's so many people that aren't buying fitness, at least in the right ways. I mean, I can look at my neighborhood and think, man, these people have never worked with a trainer before, not a great trainer. They've worked in some bad situations and all that stuff. So when I first started my business, there was a woman who I would love to have on the podcast one day. Her name is Emily Ludford. She was a good local trainer, but she worked with exclusively women out of her home. And she was, we had a conversation. I don't know how we met. It was through like one of my mutual friends or something like that. But started referring male clients to me that reached out to her. And then from that, I was able to grow my business in the beginning. And I was curious. I was like, why would you help me if I'm a competitor and all that stuff? I was new to this industry. I didn't know how cutthroat it might be. I'm sure in some instances it is, but she said she believes in community, not competition, and that there's more than enough fish in the sea to like share and pass around, and that not everybody's for her, not everybody's for me. And it was something I'm super grateful for. I'm very lucky that I met good people early on in my career. Um, and it's definitely something I want to pay forward as well. So that's the other thing too is it's not even just your personality type if you mesh with people, it's also your training style. Um, some people want to train one way, some people want to train another. I had this conversation with either my last podcast guest or the one before, but if you're training for performance, there's only so many ways you can train for it to be very, very effective. But when it comes to just like Gen Pop, just the average person trying to stay healthy, there's a lot of different ways you can train, and enjoyment's probably one of the biggest factors. And at the end of the day, it's still a service industry. So you might as well give them what they enjoy, so long as it's not negligent and it can still work them towards their goals. If it's the choice between something that's 95% effective or 80% effective, but they'll stick with the thing that's 80%, and they hate the thing that's 95%, you give them the thing that's 80%. So anyway, speaking about training styles, I actually wanted to ask you, what does your typical session look like with, let's say, the basketball team, for example?
Yeah, so, and it's tough because, like, there's so many different, like, maturity levels, so,
Mhm.
obviously, basketball, I can do a lot more of how I wanna program them, compared to, being with a high school team for twice a week,
Sure.
like, okay, there's only so much I can do. But typically with basketball, the biggest thing, and I've learned over the years is I like for my style, I'm a simple person. I'm gonna keep it as simple as possible. So, we're gonna press both vertically, horizontally. We're gonna press heavy, do a little, accessory movement if needed. We're gonna do the same thing pulling. We're gonna squat. We're gonna hinge. We're gonna do plyometrics in the beginning. We're gonna jump for vertical height, maximum height. We're gonna jump for distance, whether it's going front to back or we're going side to side laterally. So I live in the compound world. I mean, that's just my philosophy. Is I would much rather do the compound lifts. I do have guys all the time that are like, Coach, why are we not doing bicep curls? Well, you tell me when the next time you do a bicep curl, that's going to affect how you play basketball compared to us doing back squats.
Mhm.
But I'll wait for you to come up with an answer on that one. Um,
Mm.
but essentially, when it comes to training style, I'm always going to say, hey, we're going to do as little as possible because one, it's going to be simple, it's going to be easy to understand, and we're going to master the basics. You look at any professional athlete and like just anybody who's really good at what they do, they're mastering the fundamentals. And I'm a firm believer in you're going to master the fundamentals before maybe we get into some different variations of like accessory movements. Like I need you to master what an RDL is going to actually be
Mhm.
before maybe we go into some different variations of stuff. Or we're going to bench before maybe we start inclining the bench press, or work on different variations of that. But it's really focusing on the simple compounds and just always mastering the basics. That's really what I stick to for their training. I do the same thing for myself. Like it's keeping it as simple as possible. And I will credit like someone like Will Rattel who really preaches something like that. Like he is someone that would do like 3 or 4 exercises in a day. He's doing a Olympic lift, a push, a pull, and a legs. That's all he ever needed. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right to me. So
Yeah, he's a freak. I would love to have him on the podcast one day. I'll reach out to him. But yeah, he's the king of simplicity. Where as long as you play your sport, you sprint, you jump, then you do your compound, slower push pull, and then yeah, he loves Olympics too and all that stuff. And there's so many games on the table with those fundamentals. So I feel like it can be a nuanced conversation. In fact, I had this conversation with um, Brendan McGuigan, who I'm dropping his podcast episode today, actually. And we're talking about how GPP is king in this era. It seems like there's a lot more simplicity to training, which is nice because I think we went so far down the spectrum of specificity for a long time, and we started getting into like some goofy movements in the gym. Um, but I do think that for almost everything, there's like a healthy middle ground. And in my opinion, it's only healthy if you're still prioritizing the right things. So if you're going to do bicep curls and not squat, to me, that's a ridiculous thing to do as a basketball player. But if you do all the
yeah,
squats, you do all your presses, your sprinting, your jumping, your pulls, all that good stuff, and then you for whatever reason, whether it's a vanity, you have the sleeveless shirts and all that stuff and basketball and stuff, you wanna do an extra 5, 10 minutes of biceps, let it rip. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's great. The only way I think it'd be
Oh
an issue
yeah.
is if it, like, was so fatiguing that it killed their form right before a game or something like that? So, like, you have to be intelligent. It's like, are you gonna do, 100 reps of tricep extensions right before a game? Like, that'd be foolish, right? I mean, I think everybody who's been a basketball player has gotten a pump and shot of basketball afterwards and realized this is like the wonkiest thing ever. But yeah, I definitely think there's a place for accessory work, but I find that like or specificity, but I find that it almost feels like it's too extremes sometimes. And if I had to pick an extreme, I think general is better. I think it's better to master the fundamentals. Even in like sports itself, you'll get like a Allen Iverson, if you just had his crossover and nothing else for dribbling, I think you'd be pretty good? Like, I don't think you need that
Yeah,
that
you'd
much
be
for that.
okay. You definitely would get by a few people.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I definitely agree with you. I love fundamentals. I was like that as a soccer skills coach, and then I also noticed you talked about, like, the maturity levels of high school versus college athletes. I experienced that with youth athletes, elementary, middle school age versus high school kids. Um, but I think that's an interesting thing as well because it's not always just the age. There was some 5-year-olds, like little brothers, that would kick around on the side of like my sessions when I was like a U8 coach for soccer, and those kids were more mature than some of my 10-year-olds. And it's like at the end of the day, maturity is sometimes it could be a physical thing, sometimes biological, but I think it's almost always a personal, like individual, emotional thing. And I find that's the one of the big secrets for like if you can strength train the fundamentals over and over and over again, because some people don't have that level of maturity to just lock in, do the boring things over and over again and get really good at that. The ones who do, they tend to be very successful.
No, yeah. I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, I'll be honest, it's shocking at days that I feel like there are some people that I work with in the high school level that might have more maturity for the weight room than some of the college athletes. And
Mhm,
like when you look at it from the outside, I'm like, that is just insane to me
mhm,
when you're looking at the different levels. But like, it's not uncommon. Like, I know with the people I've had for 2, 3, or 4 years at the college level, like, I know what I'm getting out of them because I've been able to have the opportunity to work with them. Now,
mhm.
anyone who is transferring in or is a brand new freshman, I'm like, this is going to be a fun first week. Like, I don't know what your current level's at.
Sure.
Like, I don't know if you have ever touched a weight in this room ever. Like, I kid you not, the first question I always ask any team that has new players, the first session, I always will say to them, I'm going to be completely honest, and this is a real question. Raise your hand if you have never touched a weight in your life. And some people like are looking around laughing. I'm like, that's a serious question. Like, and I'm gonna learn if you're lying or not within the next 5 minutes when we're doing like a back squat assessment, because I'm gonna see if you actually know what you're doing.
Mhm.
And then the kids who didn't raise their hand that probably should have, I'm like, okay, they've never touched a weight. And some kids really shock me, and I'm like, oh, like there's a first year kid who lifted all through high school
Yeah,
and
yeah,
is a
yeah.
physical
Yeah.
so it definitely that maturity level, it really varies in a lot of places. Um, but I mean, it's nice because I get guys who were really good and were maybe freshmen who lived in the weight room and had some really good trainers at the high school level or just worked with someone in a private sector that knew what they were doing. And then on the flip side of that, unfortunately, I have guys that will go home for the summertime. And I kid you not, I had a basketball player. I gave those guys their summertime lift. I'm like, hey, like, if you need something, this is what I suggest you probably do if you're looking for something to do.
Mhm.
But it's also because I need them to train a specific way. I'm going to be the one to put it out. And one of the kids I found out he put on a decent amount of size. I think he left 175 and he came back at like almost with 190 in a span of like 4 months.
Yeah.
And he like it was a mix of a little bit of body fat plus also some muscle.
Sure.
I definitely will say that. But I said to him, I was like, "Oh, like, did you like stick to the workout?" And he goes, "Oh no, I just worked out with my friend." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what was your friend's like background? Like, what does he do?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing. He's just ripped." I'm like, when I tell you it was the first time I had to hold myself back from probably choking a student out at some point, I was like, "You gotta be kidding me." Like, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is and I can always go into that later, but, like, having guys that I don't know what they're doing at home, like, if they just work out with someone random or, it could be somebody like their buddy who's just like, "Yeah, I'm fit. I know allegedly, I know what I'm doing." Well, yeah, you know what you're doing for you, but,
Mhm.
like, are you a CSCS? Are you NASM or ISSA certified? Like, not gonna ask for a whole background information, but if I'm gonna have one of my guys train with you, I need to make sure you're doing what
There's something
is
smart.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
That's
then,
right.
because then when they come back to me in 4 months and they're not in the shape I need them to be, I'm gonna be a little annoyed in that aspect.
Sure. Yeah, I would say, like, even if they did all the gym bro stuff, as long as they're still sprinting and jumping and doing some sort of athletic components, it's not the end of the world. But if he just goes and does, Smith machine, bench press and all that stuff, 4 sets of 10 and all that stuff, and bicep curls and tricep extensions and all that stuff, and doesn't do anything to prepare his Achilles tendon or his groin or his hip flexor or his hamstring for the actual, like, explosiveness and violence of basketball, uh, and he runs into injuries and all that problems, or he's totally unprepared, he has zero conditioning or something like that, then that's the that's where you start to get into the point that there is actually intelligent programming, that it's not all the same. My senior year of high school, I had an injury, I had surgery, I was out for about 6 months, and I had nothing better to do. So my buddies and I would just go to the local, like, gym. It was almost like a Gold's Gym type of thing, and I'd be there on my crutches, and then I would just hit the bench, hit biceps, triceps, shoulders, and all that stuff. And I came back and I felt like completely terrible. And I'm sure there was, like, smarter ways of training and all that stuff. And, like, now it's like, okay, yeah, like, I have one injured leg, but I still have one that's really good. I could have done a lot of single leg training and all that stuff. Like, it still worked, other athletic components and all that stuff. I've definitely gotten better at understanding how to train injured and how to train at various stages of my life and all that stuff, smarter training. But, you know, it's not necessarily his fault that he doesn't know better, but it's, I guess, his fault for not trusting the right person, someone who actually understands the field and wants to help them in a specific context versus someone else who's jacked and just cares about being jacked. So I can definitely understand the frustration there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like that happens at times with even more people nowadays. I mean, obviously, when you have people who are just like, they could just be in phenomenal shape. You have no idea what they did. And then they just start saying, you know what, this worked for me. Screw it. I'm going to start posting content. And then everybody's getting off of like TikTok and Instagram reels
Mhm.
and all of that. And I'm like,
There's
yeah,
definitely an issue.
there we
Yeah. There's so much misinformation. You have people saying, eat fruit, don't eat fruit, eat vegetables, don't eat vegetables, do this, don't. I'm like, really just crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
I had somebody that said, "Don't drink water." I'm
Yeah.
like, "You're
Yeah.
not drinking water, so what am I supposed to drink then?"
Yeah. There's so many things out there. So I feel like people have to develop their filter and do a little bit of research. But in general, if it seems like it's the secret, it's probably not. If it sounds like the boring thing you've heard 1,000 times, it's probably correct. And I find that's and it's sometimes I like say really intelligent things to clients and they'll completely ignore it. And then they'll come back and like say, "Oh, I read about this. I saw this video. I saw this. I saw that. I heard about this. What do you think about it?" I was like, "All right, well, I've given you my opinion like 10 times on what I think is smart. And this is totally just like a sketchy sales pitch and all that stuff." And you see that. You see some people who say, like, if you do this one exercise, you'll be bulletproof. You'll never get an injury again. Or if you do this, then you'll be primal. Or if you do that, like, just like some of these buzzwords, I don't know where people come up with them. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I guess the fundamentals aren't sexy, but they work. And that's maybe the challenging part is just selling that to people. And the proof is in the pudding. So if you just get someone to do it consistently with good intensity and good effort, they'll see the results. It'll make an impact. So I guess that's the real sales pitch is the results.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said, even if it's not sexy, like, if you're gonna progressively overload a front squat and continuously bench,
Mhm,
you do it the right way and you progressively keep overloading,
mhm,
guess what? You're gonna get stronger. You're gonna be able to put on muscle, like, it and if that's what you're looking to do,
mhm,
it might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but consistency and practicing, that's how you get better at anything else in life. So why it will never be different when it comes to the fitness center from strength and conditioning as well. You have to
sure,
continue practicing over and over, just like you do in sport and like you
mhm,
do in any aspect of life. Same thing happens in the weight room. You have to continuously doing the same thing and get better at practicing it for it to become better.
So, like, to transition a little bit to like a skills practice context to how this relates, when I was a soccer coach and I was also a soccer skills trainer, I would see a lot of people come out and they get the skills equipment like SKLZ, like that brand. They'd have all the
Yeah.
equipment in the world. And then they'd set up this like super convoluted circuit where they're basically doing like a choreographed dance with the ball, all these little tippy tappies. You pass 50 times here and there, you spin 10 circles and all that stuff, and you finish with a shot. You have a speed ladder in the middle and all that. It was so convoluted, and like a parent would see that and think this is the best training ever. And I'd be there with a bag of balls and a bag of cones and nothing else. And I'd just get these kids to like replicate their sport. If you were a center midfielder, I'd pass you the ball on one side of the field. You'd have to turn. You'd have to play a ball 40, 50 yards into like a mini goal or something like that. And if you can do that, guess what? You're gonna make that play in the game. Or if you're like a winger, have these kids cut from the wing and they'd either have to go wide and cross the ball into a goal, or they have to cut in and like curl the ball far post or something like that. But it just replicate the actual game. And I feel like in basketball, you see so many people just spazzing on the ball, doing the most ridiculous like handles to then like get the most unrealistic shot ever. And in basketball, you don't actually need to do that. If you have a couple simple moves that are really effective, or you have really great acceleration and deceleration, great agility, and you have like a tight enough handle, you have some deception, you can pass and move and all that stuff. You're gonna get space, and all you need is space to get your shots off. And that's what it is in soccer too. Everybody wants to try the fanciest tricks in the world. You don't have to do that. If you can just create separation, you can get the ball off your foot. And that's all you need is just a little bit of athleticism and then really strong fundamentals. It's gonna make a huge difference.
No, yeah. I mean, we say it all the time, like, we never practice something fancy, and like if I'll be honest, like when I was younger, if I try to do like some N1 mixtape move like in the backyard, it didn't really help that I had a college coach that lived in the same household as me.
Mm.
So like if he would watch, he would come out and be like, "What the F are you
Yeah, what are you
doing?"
going?
I'm like, "Oh, I saw this." He goes, "No, stop doing that. I'm going to tell you right now, if you ever did that, you're getting yanked out of the game. You're going to sit on the bench for the rest of the time."
Yeah.
Like, because it's not real. And like, I feel like a lot of times that's where guys will look at different stuff and see, like, oh, well, this guy replicated that move. So,
Mhm,
when I was in high school, I play against an individual. His name is Trelont Waters. So he was a really good basketball player in the state of Connecticut.
mhm,
Phenomenal. Was not big, like I'm not that big either. I played basketball and I'm 5'9". He was probably 5'8", but he could athleticism. He could jump out of the gym,
mhm,
and I played against him in a high school scrimmage. My junior year, and just watching him, I'm like, he ended up playing basketball at LSU, and he's drafted in the second round of the NBA draft. He had a decent career, played a lot of time in the G League, but I'm watching him on the side. He doesn't do anything fancy. Like
mhm,
it's so fundamentally basic, and that's where I've always said, like, you're mastering the fundamentals. That's what separates someone who's a pro
mhm,
from someone who's not. That, hey, guess what? We're gonna do two ball dribbling again, but guess what? You're doing it again because you need to get really good at it. Now, are you ever going to dribble probably two basketballs in a game? No, that's never
yeah,
going to happen.
yeah,
But it's helping you with a mind muscle connection. It's helping you work both sides of the body, both
mhm,
sides of the brain at the same time. We're going to do continuous crossover and work on, between the leg crossover move, between like behind the back combination
mhm,
that you're only going to do one time and explode to the basket, because that's going to be a game like situation. We always say practice at a game speed with game shots. That's what
mhm.
you have to always practice.
If you look at Messi in the world of soccer, he doesn't look like the most athletic person ever, but he's got really great um, ability to accelerate and decelerate. He's got really great change of direction. He's got good deception. But if you look at his dribbling moves, it's never anything too complicated. It's like just simple cuts left and right. Even like the most basic kind of flashy move is like a step over. And if you try to look up a video of him doing it, you might find one clip in like his 20-year career. And he's the epitome of mastering the fundamentals. Um, but then also, I don't know if you know who Paul Favorites is of PGF Performance, but he was once
Yeah.
saying that if he was starting with a kid, he had two kids, and he wanted to make one of them the best basketball player in the world. And it was between somebody who never touched a basketball, but was the best in the world at playing tag. And then the other one was like, I can't remember this kid's name. His name was like Caden something. This is like this kid who's like 10 years old. He's a prodigy. He's dribbling the ball and all that stuff. But then like he never made it to the pros and all that stuff. He said he'd rather have the athletic kid who doesn't have handles than the one who has handles but no athleticism. Because you can teach a kid some fundamentals of the ball, and then they can use the athleticism to like elevate their performance. So, at the end of the day, dribbling, attacking, and defending in sports is just separation. An attacker wants to create separation from the defender wants to minimize that. They minimize the space, they can take the ball, right? So you have to be explosive, you have to be deceptive to create separation as an attacker. As a defender, you have to have amazing, amazing agility. You have to be able to react and stay close and try to read people and not get fooled and all that stuff. But it's basically tag. If you think of tag, all you're doing is I'm going to run this way, I'm going to change direction at the last second. And it's interesting how it's such a natural thing and it's so underrated. Simple games like tag, because like I can chase my dog around in the backyard. I'll never catch him if I want to because he's just so agile and
Yeah.
he's like so it's an underrated skill. I wish people would care more about it, but if you elevate your physical capabilities, and even that can occur from just being a general athlete early on in your life and developing the ability to move your body in so many different ways. But if you're able to then layer on some IQ and some skill on top of that, you're going to be a lights out athlete.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and I've heard the same thing. Like, if you were gonna take a kid and put him into sport, I would wait as long as possible and hold the actual sport itself off and make that kid run a lot, jump, change direction, like just help him become a better athlete as young as possible. Because then that's the bread and butter of everything is, as strength coaches, we're teaching people to be better athletes, not so much to be a better basketball player. And this is partially my philosophy is what we're doing in the weight room is not going to help you become an exact better basketball player. Work on your basketball skills to be better at your sport or work at your specific sport skills. Like we've said with the general prep,
Mhm.
that I'm going to help you become a better athlete. You have to now translate those skills. So if you have that chance to work with somebody and get them as fast as possible, jump as high as they can, accelerate, change direction, slow down, like I would much rather start with that kid than say, okay, we're starting with basketball. Like, no, we're going to get you athletic as possible. And then we're going to bring into the sport.
Also, along those lines, availability is the best ability. You hear it all the time, but it really matters. There's some players that are super explosive and all that stuff. They get injured. There's others that whatever. But at the end of the day, if your body can tolerate the forces of the sport that the sport demands and all that stuff, you're going to be more available and you're actually going to be able to make a difference. There's some people that they're so explosive and all that stuff, but maybe their muscles are more explosive than their tendons are. Then they snap something. There's too much demand on the tendon. So it really depends on the type of the athlete, right? You might have your in basketball, you see this all the time. They're really wiry, springy guys. They
Yeah.
are really, really athletic, even though they're probably not too good in the weight room, but really good on the court and all that stuff. Because their body is built for specific things. And then you look at someone else like Zion Williamson, for example. The poor guy can't string together like one season uninjured and all that stuff. He's so explosive, so powerful, but his tendons can't cope. And he has all these injuries left and right and all that. The weight room is a great opportunity to become more resilient and have availability. And at the end of the day, that's the difference between some athletes being in the Hall of Fame and then, being busts and all that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, believe me, we've had guys that have come through our program, from the basketball side, and some of them don't touch a weight. They despise the weight room, but you put them on the floor, they just jump at the gym. And I'm like, all right, the level of athleticism, that's just one that has to be some sort of like that's something from their family. Like they
Sure.
they got that passed down at some
Sure.
point. But like outside of that, I'm like, he's athletic enough as it is. I'm unless we're gonna get him to a 50-inch vertical, which that will never happen, like I can get him stronger, but his athleticism is to the point where I will probably anything I put together is not gonna really affect his athleticism. Now, can I get him stronger? Yeah. Might is it affect his athleticism a little bit? Yeah. He might not jump like at the same height because now he has a little more muscle mass. He has to get into the air. But outside of that, I'm like, yeah, no. At a certain point, the athleticism is just gonna take over in general. Yes, you want to be as strong as possible, and I love when guys are in the weight room, but like I'm like, it's like the weight room is pulling teeth with this one kid, but then he goes out and throws an East Bay between his legs. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. You know what? We don't have to worry about that too much. Never mind.
I think that's an important thing too, because a lot of strength coaches, there can be an ego side to it where they think the weight room is the most important thing. At the end of the day, your job is just to help elevate the performance of the athletes on the court. So if they're healthy and they're performing, and you kind of almost want to get out of their way, it can make them better, great. But sometimes if you try to mess with a good thing too much, you can take away from it. And especially with specialists, Then you're getting into the area of, is it worth, you know, let's say you're a lineman and you squat 500 pounds. Is it worth trying to get 510 if you have something holding you back, or if it's worth like maybe you get an injury or something like that, you can't play on game day. So you don't really have that issue when it's like a middle school kid who's never touched a weight before and he's not even close to maxing anything, right? But if you have these people who are specialists, you have to ask yourself the right questions, and that's where the nuance comes into play. Should I just let him be the way that he is and not mess with him too much? Should we add here? Can we add here? Does it detract from like the actual playing style and ability and all that stuff? That's where I think it gets interesting. But yeah, if you can just keep the guy healthy and you know, he's in the weight room, he's building camaraderie with the guys and all that stuff, that's great. But yeah, a lot of weight coaches, it's my way to highline, and they can end up messing with the good thing. So that's where there's definitely nuance. Weight room typically helps most people get better. But again, it depends on how it's done, especially volume and intensity in the world of basketball. You guys have so many games. You guys get beat up so bad. You don't want to just uh, try to crush people in the weight room, especially in season with how chaotic the schedule is and all that. So the time of the season and year and all that stuff matters. The volume, the intensity matters. All that stuff matters. So that's why that's why there's this field. That's why it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we like when we get into the heart of like conference play, there are times that we could have potentially 3 games in a week. And
Yeah.
like I'll look at the outlook of the week and I'll be like, I'm gonna be honest, we could either completely skip the weight room this week because essentially, and like you hit the nail right, you hit the nail around the head with the fact that a lot of times I feel like there are people in the strength conditioning realm or just the performance enhancing realm that think they're the star player. I've learned very on that that's really not the case. Like, are there times that we can take a little more of a jump to the front seat?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's when they're in their early off season,
Mhm.
and if you're doing some sort of like a linear periodization, okay, yeah, we're really focusing on a huge hypertrophy phase, maybe.
Mhm.
Because you're so far from the start of your games again, yeah, you got your ample rest time for a little bit after the
Yeah.
season ended, and how you can like put a lot more focus in the number of days we're in the weight room, the volume of training we can do, the volume of the exercises. And obviously, as we get closer and closer, if you look at any kind of linear periodization, that's going to obviously diminish as time goes
Mhm.
on. So there are literally times I'll look right now, now we're still technically in our pre-competition phase where we're going 3 days a week in the weight room, full 3 full body days, still doing a little bit of plyos. We're doing and we're moving some good weight. Like they're doing like a 3x4 at a pretty high percentage in what they're doing right now. Then they're going to shift over to a 3x3. And before games even start, like 2 weeks before that, we're doing our testing after the 8 weeks of preseason that we had.
Mhm.
After that's done, I'm like, yeah, we're going to a legit maintenance phase. Like you will never see more than a 3x6 essentially from me. You're not going to see more than a 3x6. I'm a percentage guy too, like
Yeah.
at 85% of your one. Like outside of that, don't try to do any more because now your focus point at that point in the year is you have to have really quality practices and games. And I try to tell coaches all the time that I work with, they're like, "Hey, when should we lift?" And the exact answer I tell them is, "Well, which one do you want to have a better quality of? Do you want to have a better quality of practice itself
Mhm.
or a quality lift?" And they're like, "Well, practice, of course." I said, "So do practice first because
Mhm.
if they're going to lift before practice,
Yeah.
they're taking away a lot of energy. And no offense, you're probably going to have a shitty practice.
Mhm.
So, because they're going to be a little more tired, they just exerted however many calories over a 30, 45-minute lift, maybe an hour. So, I'm like, you want to do it after. And that's the other thing I've come to learn a lot of times is there are times I have to sacrifice, okay, you know what? This is originally what I had planned.
Mhm.
They had a really tough practice today. So you know what? We're breaking down the volume and intensity even
Mhm.
more. Like maybe we were thinking a full body 3x6 on 4 or 5 compound movements. Yeah,
Mhm.
you know what? We're gonna do like 2x3s. We're just gonna go 2x3s of very low to moderate intensity, just getting the body moving a little bit more. Like, and there might be days where I'm like, yeah, practice was intense. Don't lift today. Like,
Mhm.
don't lift. Come back
Mhm.
tomorrow. Like, we'll go from there. But there's so many coaches, or I shouldn't say so many, but there are coaches out there, that I think I've seen get offended at times when it's, "Oh, well, we're not doing the lift." Well, you're never the star of the show to begin with.
Sure.
Like, that's the first thing. So the
Mhm.
ego definitely has to kinda take a back seat, and
Sure.
actually, if it can get out of the car, that would be even better. But essentially, it's, okay, you need the games, you need the practice.
Mhm.
That's what your quality is. And then it's the little side dish. Do you have enough calories left to put in a strength conditioning session? If you do, great. If not, that's okay because you know what their ultimate goal is. And it's not to be so good in the weight room. Their goal at the end of the day for basketball is to cut the net down at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Now, is what we're doing in the weight room going to correlate exactly to that? No, probably not a direct correlation, but it will help them win games essentially, potentially, that maybe they do jump a little bit higher and they're able to run faster. But what we're doing in the bulk of that season, just allowing them to maintain their body, is not going to have a full effect on that. So
Mhm.
they will need to have that rest time.
I don't think there's a strength coach in the world that's so good that you can have a trash coach and trash players on the actual court, and the strength program is so good that they still end up winning everything. So I think that's an important way to understand that, like, you help, you make an impact, you have an influence, but you're not the central player, like you were saying. You're not the most important person in this organization. Now, it doesn't mean that what they do isn't important, but that's like, especially in the college sector, professional sector, everybody has to work together. It has to be the physios, the strength staff, the actual sport coaches, and all that. And that's when your communication uh, comes into play, because if you go for a hard session and then the coach goes for a hard session and you don't want the boys to be overcoached and then they are, that it totally messes with your plan. So if you're able to talk ahead of time, it's like, you're gonna have an easy practice or hard practice. What state are the guys in from yesterday? You can have that conversation with them as well. Use your coaching and all that stuff. But that's where I start to think about Corey Schlesinger talking about microdosing, how that was just his natural
Yeah.
adaptation to the difficulty of the demands of the schedule of all the basketball players, with all the travel, with all the games, with all the practice. He still needed them to lift, and they just weren't fresh enough to go super hard for 2 or 3 sessions a week, an hour at a time. So he said, okay, let's just chop this up. Instead of three, 3 hour long sessions, 2 hour long, 1 hour long sessions a week, let's just do 6 20-minute sessions a week. And then he was smart about it too, where he said he's going to use the high low model. If you're going to have a game day and that's going to be your hardest stimulus, then you can do a lift afterwards and still go pretty heavy. It's not going to be that much at the end. And then you're going to be sore, but then you have time to recover, as opposed to every day is just kind of watered down and you're cooked. You have no days to recover. And then
Yeah.
on a day between games or something like that, when you have a little bit of time to recover, you're still going to do some gym work, but maybe it's more accessory stuff. Maybe it's a little bit lighter. Maybe it won't beat you up so bad. I just find it's intelligent. They can either do a little bit of stuff before practices and games, and it can act as a primer. If you're smart about your programming, or you get the session done, you go and you can hit some stuff a little bit heavier. It's not going to be the same intensity that you actually would have wanted because they're already fatigued from the practice. But then it's not going to take away from their performance on the court. So that's where, again, I find it's really interesting, all the nuance of training, the timing, the volume, the intensity, and then you have to understand what's going on with the sport itself. I have a wrestler, and wrestlers are notorious for having some of the worst conditioning. And I'll just ask, how was your practice? How was your tournament? How was your whatever? And he'll say, oh, coach had us do 100 pull ups as the finisher after a 2 hour workout session. And then he has to go and do a session with me. And it's like, all right, looks like we're doing 2 sets of like the compound movements. And if we have to cut it early or we have to reduce the rate of it, focus more on technique and all that stuff, that's maybe what we have to do. But I mean, yeah, it's a battle, especially in the realm of like private sector people. So, Clay, Ben, whatever, there's some of the people I've had on the podcast before. They work with like middle school, high school athletes. They might work with a group where someone comes in from baseball, someone from volleyball, someone from basketball. And then it's like, how are you guys practice? They have a workout plan for everybody. It's like, oh, coach made us do this, coach made us do that. And I'm like, well, I don't want to double down on this and just like cook you guys, into the ground and all that stuff. So what can I give you that will help you, that you already haven't gotten a ton of? So yeah, it's definitely a tricky job, but I guess it's part of the fun of it too, is the adaptability on the fly.
No, yeah, definitely. And I mean, like we've both said, like you have to adapt. And I think even, and I know Ben, I know that's how our relationship started, was
True.
Ben
Yeah.
kind of connected to us.
Yeah.
So
Good dude.
but yeah, like I've seen all the stuff he does. But even like I love to see how it is private sector wise, because I at least am able, primarily being in the college realm, I'm right there and I can be like, hey, how is practice? Like,
True.
what kind of practice are we doing? So then like I at least don't have to I have to adapt still,
Mhm.
but it's not at that on the fly like compared to, I could see Ben having somebody come right in and be like, yeah, I'm absolutely cooked, and the session's literally starting. He'll be like, "Okay, never mind. This is what we do instead." So, definitely, it definitely seems like it's a tougher thing, or I
Mhm.
shouldn't say tougher. It definitely keeps people a little more on their toes. It seems like more in the private sector,
Mhm.
and it can obviously in the college sector too, because then I just have to. There are days that I just literally just completely throw out. Like I have 30 minutes to basically create a brand new lift, and I'm
Sure.
like, okay, never mind. Like, we're just gonna completely throw this out in the trash, and I'm gonna just start from complete scratch right now. So yeah, but it's all comes with the job, like
Mhm.
because nobody's ever gonna be 100% fresh. That's the reality. Like if someone says that they have zero pain or zero soreness, I'm like, well, that's probably because you just slept on the couch for 3 weeks. Like
Mhm.
you probably didn't really do something. Now, if I was to ever say, "Oh, I have 0 pain," like, no, like, my knees are killing me all the time
Mhm.
from the amount of stuff I do in my lower body, from sprinting, jumping, like, yeah, like, discomfort's always gonna be there and pain is always gonna be there, but it's just how we manage that pain and having that conversation about that, so.
I find that, you're saying that it could be different private sector versus college sector. I find that even with Gen Pop, they have their own kind of fluctuations and how they're feeling just based off life, and that's something that people don't consider all the time too. You can write the most perfect program ever, and if you're not able to adapt it to life, it's not a good program. You have to be adaptable because you never know if someone gets in an argument with someone that's close to them and they're not in the right headspace. You don't know if there was like a death in the family. You don't know if they got sick. You don't know if they had an injury that had nothing to do with you. You don't know if they didn't get a good night's sleep, if their kid was up all night, if they have a deadline for work, if they traveled. There's so many things that can just pop up and mess with this perfect program that you write. And at the end of the day, it won't matter that much afterwards. And then also with the Gen Pop side of things, I also want to mention that sometimes people will have a good weekend, and then a Monday morning session is a little difficult. So that's another thing that's
Little
totally
tough walking into
yeah,
that Monday morning session after a
yeah,
long Saturday, Sunday.
yeah. But yeah. So what I was saying though is that that's where also, if you're programming long term, at least in the Gen Pop world, I found that like I wrote a program today. I'm writing my programs so much more flexibly than when I started. I used to be like, this is what it has to be because next month I have this plan and the following month I have this plan. And I wrote a program today where it's like, all right, option one, two, or three for this movement. I want to work on a hinge. If someone wants to do a barbell deadlift, they want to do an RDL, they want to do a chop bar deadlift, they want to do sumo, and they want to do that for the phase. I'll even let them pick because at the end of the day, it's close enough. And if you're going to do any of them, you hate the one that I picked for, you can do it at 80% intensity, or you get to pick of those four, you choose your favorite, you do 100% intensity. I just care about the adaptation. I'm not married to any exercise. I'm not married to the specific this or that. So, um, flexibility is actually a really important thing that you're forced to learn after a little bit of time in this field. Um, so I wanted to move on to some segments real quick. Um, this is one of my favorite questions, but what feels like a win for you in your job? What feels like a touchdown, a home run? What like gets you juiced up?
Oh god. Well, I think we have to say which job. I have like 7 of
Sure.
those.
So
Um,
let's stick with the basketball side for today. Let's say basketball strength coaching. What's something that really makes a big impact for you?
um, Something that just impacts me is when I have buy-in from the guys. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously it's been great. What I've been able to do, this is my 4th year, obviously, being with the program. So over the last 4 years from kind of the buy-in that we essentially really didn't have, and we were a really good team my first year. That was a team that went 23-5 and,
Mm-hmm.
went 15-0 at home.
Mm-hmm.
But the amount of times I could try to get them into the weight room was I can count on one hand. Like it was painful. But now, with our guys, they hold each other accountable and have that buy-in. We have guys who are coming in at 6:45 in the morning and are screaming, "Let's go." Like they're ready to get after it. They're pushing themselves. The vibes are ridiculously high. So like if we're able to, for me, from that standpoint, is if I can, create kind of that love that I ended up getting
Mm-hmm.
essentially for the weight room, even if it's not the most important thing, but if they can enjoy it and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
work hard And it makes that time for them go by that much easier. That's a win for me. Obviously, no one else getting hurt. That's also a huge win. Um, making sure they do what they have to. But when they're pushing themselves and you see them pushing each other, now they want to do even better. Like a win for me is if I have to be like, all right, guys, I love it. Let's maybe dial it back slightly. Like, but I want to see them get to that point, and they've been really close to that. So I'd say that's definitely a win in my book.
I don't know if you realize that, but like it's actually pretty rare. You don't find that in a lot of like the college strength training world. A lot of people they're like, man, I have to do this workout. I have to. They don't have this like I get to work out mentality. They don't get hyped up. They just try to check the box, move on, and get into whatever else they'd rather be doing at that point in time, especially for the early morning workouts. Most college kids aren't good sleepers, so they're not going to want to wake up early and work out or anything like that. So, I'm sure you're heavily involved in setting that culture and creating workouts that are enjoyable enough for them that they have that mentality, and that's awesome, dude. You should feel good about that.
No, yeah, definitely. So I definitely feel good about that. I think part of that is because those guys see me that I'm in there before them
Sure,
even earlier and I'm doing a lot of the same stuff they do.
sure.
I train like an athlete myself because if I'm gonna talk the talk, I have to walk the
So,
walk. So, when they walk in at 6:30 in the morning and they see me ripping like a 315 back squat, they're like, "Oh, okay, like he means business." I'm like, "Yes, we mean business. Like let's get after it."
that's awesome. I was gonna ask, do you have any pet peeves in the industry? Anything that's kind of grinding your gears right now?
Um I kind of said it a little earlier. I would say probably a little bit with social media, and I'm gonna be honest. I can go both ways on social media. I think it's something that's really good, and I think it's something that is not good at the same time. So with it kind of being a pet peeve is that I think there's a lot of times now where everybody who just kind of obviously has an interest in fitness, which now I feel like I see so many more people, especially in my generation, even
Mhm.
like seeing that interest in fitness, nutrition, all of that. But because they have an interest in it, they think they're a professional at the
Sure.
same time. And like giving off advice, telling people how to train when, yeah, I know I'm not an exercise phys background, but I'm, thankfully I have a knowledge, I'm studying to
Mhm.
do the CSCS and going through that all together as well. So, it's like, there are people that have knowledge on it, and now when you're working with people who don't have a knowledge essentially and are just like, "Yeah, try these few workouts to shed belly fat."
Sure.
Unless one of those is stop eating as much as you are,
Yeah.
then there is no exercise for that. Like, let's be honest. So, like, I feel like at times social media can be like a Wikipedia page. Anybody
Sure.
can obviously
Yeah.
add into it, and they have to be a professional to add into it. But like I said, on the flip side, I think there is a lot of really good that comes out of social media too.
Two things based off that. One, absolutely. I 100% agree with what you're saying. Uh, it does feel like people can just say anything, and it's hard to have that filter. And then the other thing is you're talking about studying for your CSCS, and that just gave me like flashbacks. Because yeah, same thing. I wasn't from a scientific background, and then I just got this super dense textbook. I didn't understand half the words, and I was like, how am I ever going to understand any of this? How am I ever going to pass this test? So I just forced myself to read it, even if I didn't understand the words a couple times through, cover to cover. But the secret to me getting my CSCS is Mario Kart. I know that sounds really weird, but I got an app on my phone that had quizzes, like 10-question quizzes, and I would play a single course of like Mario Kart with my wife, and then do a quiz. That just allowed me to do it like 100 quizzes a day or something like that. Answer like 1,000 questions a day or something. And I was like, okay, now
Yeah.
like the practice and all that stuff. But so it's not directly. I'm not saying if you're really good at Mario Kart, you could be a CSCS, but it's definitely a tool that you can use to help get your CSCS. Uh,
I feel like now I'm gonna go buy a Nintendo Switch and I'm
yeah,
just gonna I'm gonna probably run the Best Buy now and do
yeah.
that. It's gonna help me figure out how the Krebs cycle actually works and go from there.
Oh, dude, that's the worst. I don't want to talk about some of that stuff. It just 'cause I've never had to explain any of that stuff to my clients. I 100% think the science matters. There's the scientific side, and then there's the practical applied side. The practical applied is where your bread and butter is. I'm sure you've even like understood that from your experience so far. Um, it
Yes.
definitely matters the scientific side, but like, it's not. It's just the foundation. I haven't talked about the Krebs cycle since I was studying for the test, so you're good. You don't have to worry too much about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously just really quick on that topic too, like, so our applied exercise science
Mhm.
professor, he has a background in nutrition. He was the athletic trainer at the school decades ago, and he has a strength conditioning class that he teaches that utilizes the CSCS textbook.
Yep.
And he has said to me, he's like, he wants me to come in and obviously talk about, programming and all that stuff. And I'm in the fitness center one day and I'm doing my workout and his class is in there, and they're like, oh, if you're going to give cues on how to do this, like, what are you going to do? And they start talking in such scientific,
Yeah.
like, literacy. I'm like, guys, I had to stop. I had to take my beats off. I had to stop listening to ACDC really quick. And I was like, guys, very quickly, I will go right back to my workout. As someone who does this, you will never, ever, ever talk like that to anybody.
Sure.
If you find someone like that, hold on to them, trap them in a cage because that's a unicorn.
Yeah.
But you are never going to have to ever say the different types of levers, explain the difference between a second
Yeah.
and third
Yeah.
class lever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's never going to happen in anything, whether it's collegiate or private sector. It's not going to happen.
Sometimes I like want to explain the science to clients, even in like the most basic ways, and they'll just be like, listen, I don't care, just tell me how many reps. I'm like, all right, well,
Yeah.
I understand I'm here, but so yeah, it's not it's
You know what? I don't give a shit. How many sets and reps am I doing?
yeah, yeah. I was gonna ask so two more questions. One, are there any positive trends that you've noticed? Something that's made you really happy in this space?
Um, One, obviously, social media, because, like I said, there's so many really good coaches and people in this industry. So, like you or Ben, or obviously, Ben and I, we connected at Coach 'em Up,
Mhm.
in Austin back in June, and a lot of people I met through there from all over the country, and the podcast that Tim and Zach put out. I literally just listened to the brand new episode with Roman, who does the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Yeah,
I just literally was listening to that when I was on my way back, and just listening to so many people like that. So yeah, on social media, that's one. But I would say too, like, just the community, and I think you definitely have touched upon it before today, and I know in other episodes, the community that it really builds in this industry. Like, yeah, you want to be the best because we're all a majority of us are former athletes. We're gonna compete against one another, like, and that's always gonna be in there. But essentially, like, I'm never gonna be ill faced if someone's being successful. I'm like, yeah, let's effing go. Like, you're doing what you're supposed to, and like
mhm.
just having that community of all these professionals. Like Tim has always said, like, why not us? And
Yeah,
he really
that's true.
means that by every single person. So, like, why not each one of us? Like, yeah, we're gonna support each other. We're gonna support businesses. We're gonna support everybody who's a coach. Like that's what we're doing. Like, is building that community. So seeing how involved everybody is from all these different areas, it's awesome. It's a great field to be part of.
It's cool to see as well how big some of these like accounts are blowing up, even just in the past few years. I remember I was following Tim before he was being featured on like some of the NFL like network stuff or on their like Sports Center or whatever, just like on some of these big pages. Um, and yeah, I mean, like some of these guys have just blown up recently, and I got a ton of respect for Tim because the dude does the thing and he does everything, and whether it's him creating Apex or having the podcast or having the conference, it feels like he's doing everything and just like an overnight success and all that stuff, but it's not. He's worked hard for many many years, so I like the why not us mentality. Um, but yeah, I mean, like it's the same thing. Like we're still fairly early in our careers. I'm a little bit further ahead of you in terms of just years in the space, but I mean, like you've had a lot of experience already up to this point so far and all that stuff. And if you just keep grinding and working the way you are, and I keep trying to do my thing and all that, you don't know what happens 5, 10 years. Like these big names weren't big names from the start. You have to build to a certain level, so why not? So that's definitely I really appreciate that. I think it's a nice, healthy, kind of like wholesome sentiment to put out there, but it's also real. You get to see these people working together and growing together. So, final, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like, even like going on the Apex thing, like, you have all these people shifting over to
Yeah,
this. I'm telling you right now, Apex hasn't even done like a full open event. It's gonna be bigger than High Rocks. It's gonna be bigger than CrossFit Games, like,
yeah,
just because of how many people like are so invested in it. But yeah, like someone like Tim, like that man, and I know Blaine McConnell posted something the other day, like in reality, that man deserves his flowers for what he has done in this industry
Sure.
for everybody. He really is responsible for the connections of, I think, a lot of
Sure.
people in this industry, doing the conference, doing the podcast, doing Apex, like how much he's bringing so many people together. And then obviously, Zach as well. Zach, for me, I've had a ton of conversations with Zach, so
Oh
he's
yeah, here's fun with
he's
the he's great
definitely
about
been
that.
like, yeah, he's really quick about that.
Yeah.
Like he and I have had a lot of conversations too. Like, so he's been a really good mentor to me as well. But
Cool.
honestly, both of those guys, and that's the whole community. It's awesome.
Any final piece of advice for let's do two. One for a young athlete who just wants to improve their performance, and then one for a coach who wants to follow in your footsteps.
Um, for a young athlete,
Mhm.
it's a great question. Um, I'm gonna give the same advice that I was given when I was younger: is to use all the tools in the toolbox. You never know when you're gonna need to really bring each one of them out, but you need to make sure you have enough to utilize, and also to work hard. No one ever drowned in a little bit of sweat. Like
I like that.
that's always stuck to me, and that's stuck to me both as an athlete, as a professional. Like, if you're not working hard, you're not doing something right. And
Mhm.
even if you're not sweating, you might be tired, but it's okay, like, to work hard and really push yourself to that limit. So those are, for a young athlete, is definitely the working hard aspect, and utilize all the tools that you have as you continue to build them in. And then for someone's looking to kind of be a coach, like follow my footsteps. First of all, you're going to live off caffeine with the amount of stuff that I'm stuck doing. If you're following those exact footsteps, 1000%.
Mhm.
Um, but honestly, the biggest thing is, you know, it's really a marathon. As much as we want it to be a sprint, as much as we like sprinting and all of that, it's not going to happen overnight. Yes, we all want to have that overnight success where, maybe you post out one reel and it reaches,
Sure.
100,000 people, and, you have stuff like that. But in reality, like, that's not what the real world is. Like, if you want to earn your flowers and you want to really be in this industry, like, it's going to take time. Like, I mean, I've started my LLC back in July, and from where I was in July to where I am now, I and we're coming into the start of October. I didn't think that I'd have any of the business that I'm currently doing. I didn't know that
Mhm.
I would be, working with a high school hockey team. I didn't know that I'd still be programming and doing all this for all these other teams and for some of these Gen Pop people, or hopping on a podcast. Like, I could not have guessed any of this stuff's happened in the middle of the summer. So, it's really just take it a day at a time. And like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you really just have to take each day as it is. And there's going to be good days and there's going to be tough days, but you know what? They're just going to keep stacking up, and you have to just continue to stack those days.
I love both answers, and it inspired me to have like two super quick mini rants. But the toolbox thing made me think about how there was a lot of people that say I would get started if I had this, I could do more if I had that. The only reason why I'm not where I want to be is because I don't have X, Y, Z. And I think that's a trash mentality. I think there's so much you can do, even with like the limited things at your disposal. You don't need to have, an NFL, performance facility to be able to sprint and jump, to be able to lift weights and all that stuff. But even when I was in high school, it may not have been the best training, but I had a doorway pull-up bar. I do pull-ups, I do push-ups, I do, wall sits and planks and side planks, and I do, jump squats and jumping lunges and broad jumps and sprints and hill sprints and all that stuff. And it may not have been the best training of all time. It's definitely not better than doing nothing because I had the mentality of, like the opposite of an opportunistic mentality. I was like, "Oh, I can't do it because I don't have a bar and I don't have a rack. I can't get stronger. I can't get faster." Instead, I was thinking, let me do the most I can with what I have at my disposal. And then I earn the right to say, man, I could get to the next level if I had this. But if I'm not even maxing out what I have at my disposal, then I have no right to make that complaint. And then the other thing that you're talking about was, oh shoot, you're talking about for coaches. It was the keeping your head down.
Oh, take each day as it is.
Yeah, taking
Like,
care
take
of
each day as
it.
it is.
Oh, okay. You're talking about no one's ever drowned in like in their own sweat or something like that. I
No,
find it
yeah, no
underrated.
one work hard, no one's drowned in a little bit of sweat.
I like that. I don't think there's ever been a more satisfying feeling than the results of hard work paying off. You know, you might have a slice of cake and be like, "Oh, this makes me happy." But then you can feel like shit later, you know? And it's like, or you can work, I was from 13 to 18, I was working harder than all my teammates. And everybody who says I was a shit soccer player, I was the only one to go and play college soccer out of that entire class. And that put a pretty big smile on my face. I was like, you guys said I was nothing for 5 years, and I'm the only one who's done something to go to the next level and put a smile on my face. So I want to vouch for hard work and the joy of it, but also in the moment, it might suck to do some sprints or to do a run or something like that. But there's also some weird like pleasure, pain sensation that you get out of it. And you feel good about yourself. You feel good about being useful and working hard. Um, and then finally along those lines, it was it was the talking about the drowning in your sweat. I was connected to that. Growing quickly. Okay, yes. I'm so glad I didn't forget this. This is a huge one. Um, there are people that have overnight successes, and there's people that are just 15 minutes of fame. And I think the difference is the substance that's underneath that. Some people were just waiting to blow up, but they've been chipping away at it for years. And then there's other people where they might just have that one little bit of luck and get the 15 minutes of fame. People realize that there's nothing to them, and then they go back to obscurity. So I think for the people that blow up super quickly, you're talking about you're blowing up pretty fast, and you hope to continue to do so and all that. I think it's really all the stuff behind the scenes that no one's ever seen. No one's actually an overnight success because there's so much that goes into that. Dylan Shannon is a great example. His account went from, I don't know, a couple hundred to a couple 100,000 in the span of a year, if
Yeah.
that. But like the dude didn't just become jacked and athletic and intelligent and good at coaching in one day. He's been doing that forever, and he just got one
Yeah,
push.
he's been
Coach
that's since he was 14.
Yeah, so
He's been lifting since he was 14, and he's also great too. Like, I talk to Dylan a lot.
yeah,
We've texted back and forth. I'm not gonna lie, he got me hooked on the raw nutrition supplements. Like,
yeah,
he might have played a part in that. But no, like, and you look at what he's done. I literally was just remembering, like, he had, like, I think a year ago, he had like 400 something followers, and now he's got
yeah,
like 250K.
yeah.
Like,
I'm crazy.
and he just sticks to it. Like, that's what it is. He just sticks to it. But yeah, like, he didn't just get that much more jacked after 250,000 followers. That's from
Yeah,
him
yeah,
training since he's like 14 years old.
yeah. So yeah, there's definitely value. You might think this hasn't paid off yet. Why am I doing all the hard work? It hasn't paid off yet. Why am I doing all the hard work? And then that's when you get your big break. But it's not actually an overnight success because I don't know how old he is. He's maybe mid 20s. He's been doing this for over a decade. Really hard, really consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a great lesson for people who are expecting that, big blow up, but they're not putting in absolutely everything on a regular basis. You even look at like, I think Viola Davis is like one of the most successful actresses. I don't think she made it big until she was like 60 or so. It's like, so you never know. But yeah. Finally, I was just gonna ask, because we're running out of time here. If you wanted to plug yourself, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. So I have both my personal and I have my business one. So my Instagram is at Tyler Peretz underscore. So Tyler Tyler, Peretz is Peretz. And then my business one is at Peretz Performance. If anyone is ever looking to train, obviously I do some online stuff as well. So I started to shift over into that.
Cool.
But also, like I said, like, if anybody listens to this, I'm located in southeastern Connecticut. So if you're anyone in that area and happen to listen, that's awesome. But definitely always, looking for anyone who's just trying to work hard. So if you need to ever reach me, I'm really quick to responding back to DMs. You can also send an email, but all that contact info is all gonna be on Instagram.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, man, this was great. I know we were talking about this. I was excited, and hopefully it was good. This was my first ever podcast, so
It was good.
this was definitely fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. If I'll try to set up that episode that I was talking to Ben about, where it's like the three of us.